auf jeden Fall richtig gut aus. Schon diesen Teller gegessen, sieht sehr, sehr lecker alles. Vorbeilaufen, guck mal hier, das ist quasi Hobbiton oder so, ne? Einmal zum Essen. Da hinten ist dann noch Nachtischbuffet. Mal so ein bisschen durch. Kuchen und was haben wir noch? Hier hinten kleine Törtchen. Sehr schön.
Now the first thing I want to talk to you though about is actually the pathway just at the back there. Unfortunately you cannot see it, but when this next group heads off maybe you'll get a little glimpse of it. That is called Gandalf's cutting. Now it was featured in 2 parts of the movies. It was first featured in the Fellowship of the Ring, which is the very first movie for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Then it was also featured again in The Unexpected Journey, which is the first movie for the Hobbit trilogy. Now through this pathway, Gandalf and Frodo come riding on a horse and cart. The world gets its first glimpse of the beautiful Shire. They head up through the pathway and they continue throughout the movie scene. Fun fact though, that pathway was built 4 times. Now the first time it was built, it was wide. It was wide enough so a standard horse and cart could fit straight through the middle. Happy days. This is where we have Gandalf, who's a wizard, and Frodo, who's a hobbit, seated side by side. When we did that, they looked identical in height. Now we could not have that. That was a no-no. So what we did was we actually made this pathway a little bit smaller. Peter Jackson didn't like that one, so they made it a little bit more smaller. He didn't like that one either, so they brought it in one more time. He decided he did like that one, but he didn't like the stones. So they changed the stones. Then it was perfect. There's only one problem after that. They couldn't fit a horse and cart through there. So what they did was they actually had to build another cart. Now this cart was very, very narrow as well, and it was built to be about 5 meters long. What they did there was they placed Frodo 3 meters behind Gandalf in the same cart to create the height difference between the two, attached a little camera to the front of the cart and only film facing forward. So the little camera technique that you see there is called forced perspective. Peter Jackson is literally showing you what he wants you to see. When you're swimming from behind, have you guys seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? You know that little Oompa Loompa man who sings all the songs about the terrible children? Yeah. He's actually seated beside Gandalf when they were filming from behind. So Elijah Wood had a size double who was very, very small, and Gandalf had a size double who was very, very tall. Now this man was from Germany and he was over 7 feet tall. So he was actually the double for Gandalf. Through that pathway was one of my favourite scenes as well. Bilbo Baggins comes running out of his home to the top of the hillside there. He runs along the left hand side of the hill, jumps into a pile of chickens, continues to run on down the hill. He even jumps over this back fence to come on into this veggie garden. The scene cuts. You see him running around the outside of a little pond. He makes his way up through the pathway yelling 5 words. Anyone know them? Perfect. Anyone want to demonstrate it? Right, okay.
Also die haben 44 von diesen Hobbit Holes gebaut und die haben davon in dem Film 10 Stück benutzt. Ich meine, was für eine Arbeit für, naja, aber gut.
Fake. The whole thing. Now to understand why we have a fake tree, we're going to go right back to the start and understand 2 things first. Number 1, in J.R.R. Tolkien's book, he wrote a whole lot of detail about the Shire. Now one of those details is that Bag End is built underneath an oak tree. Number 2, I've mentioned this about 4 or 5 times already, Peter Jackson is crazy. So in the books, it says Bag End was built underneath an oak tree, so they needed to do it. Now Peter Jackson started to build underneath that big tall pine tree on the hill. He even had people who were going to get craned down into the tree, and their jobs was to pick off all of the pine needles and the pine cones by hand and wire on some artificial oak leaves. But unfortunately they had to stop the process. And that was because they realised that when they were trying to dig out from underneath the tree, the roots from the tree there were too many of them. Peter Jackson then realised that if he was actually supposed to build a hobbit hole underneath a real life tree, the roots from the tree would go straight into the middle of the home. So instead of building it there, they moved it over to where you see it today. He went down into Matamata, which is 15 minutes that way, cut down a real oak tree from a nearby farm. They chopped it into 11 pieces. They numbered each piece from 1 to 11. They were all in V-shaped pieces, so when it was hemmed, they could fit it all together nice and perfectly. Then they helicoptered each piece from Matamata to the top of that hobbit hole, put a whole lot of poles into it, and that's how we had a tree stand on top of that again throughout the filming of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's a lot of work, and it's even a lot of work to say it. I didn't even do any of it. But the movie set that we're on is the Hobbit movie set. Now, Lord of the Rings was filmed first, the Hobbit was filmed after it, but the Hobbit was set 60 years earlier. So we needed a 60-year younger looking tree. And Peter Jackson, he was a weird, but a little bit different. So he wasn't the type of guy that'll go to another oak tree farm and say, yeah, that looks roughly 60 years younger, we'll take that one. He wanted the exact tree from Lord of the Rings, but he wanted a 60-year younger looking version of it. So what he did was he took a photo from the Lord of the Rings tree before it was eventually dismantled and given out as firewood. He put it through a 3D printer to get out a model. They then got the model electronically taken down 10 years at a time until it was 60 years younger. And from that model, they built exactly what you will see today on top of that hill. So in theory, if that tree was real 60 years from today, it'll look exactly like the one that once stood there for Lord of the Rings. This tree here has a big concrete slab holding it in place underneath the ground. It has a steel frame running up on the inside. We used expandable foam and silicone to bring out as much detail as possible to make that tree look as realistic as possible. And then we imported 200,000 artificial leaves from Taiwan, bought it here, and hand wired them onto the tree for filming. However, 4 weeks after the tree was built, a cyclone hit the valley, and it actually faded the colour leaves. Peter Jackson was not happy at all. So he had some people put up in cherry pickers into the tree, and their job was to spray paint each side of an artificial leaf a different colour green. After the first coat was done, it wasn't good enough. The second one wasn't good enough. The third coat wasn't good enough. Finally, they did the fourth coat. Peter Jackson thought it looked perfect. It was right for filming. No cyclone problem. Put it in the film for 15 seconds.
Dem ersten Herr der Ringe-Film, da wo Bilbo seine Geburtstagsfeier feiert und so, das ist quasi der Geburtstagsbaum und so. Und dann haben wir hier so die Szene, wo Bilbo und Gandalf dann sitzen und so rauchen und Bilbo macht dann so einen Rauchreifen und Gandalf dann dieses Schiff dadurch. Das Beste ist, das ist so beim Sonnenuntergang und wie man jetzt ganz gut sehen kann, hier ist kein Sonnenuntergang, sondern der Sonnenuntergang ist hinter uns. Also was hat man gemacht? Das ist ganz intelligent eigentlich. Man hat den Sonnenaufgang gefilmt und hat es dann rückwärts abgespielt. Was natürlich nur wieder sehr gut war, ist dann, dass da ein Vogel durchgeflogen ist und das haben die irgendwie nicht gesehen oder das hätte nicht gejuckt. Dann hat man in dem Cinema Release dann auch den Vogel gesehen, der rückwärts durch das Bild fliegt. Haben es leider für die DVD-Fassung wieder rausgenommen, aber das war natürlich sehr intelligent.
Wir waren heute in Hobbiton.
Ja, ist korrekt.
Ja, haben uns die Hobbit-Höhlen angeguckt. Ich weiß gar nicht, ob die wirklich Hobbit-Höhlen heißen. Ich kann mich nicht mehr dran erinnern, schon ein bisschen länger her.
Also die sagen immer Hobbit-Holes, sind so Hobbit-Löcher, oder?
Ja, wahrscheinlich, keine Ahnung. Also auf Englisch habe ich es jetzt nicht gelesen. Das war schon ziemlich süß. Es gibt hier zwei unterschiedlichen Größen von Höhlen. Eine mit sozusagen 60% der Größe, wie sie erscheinen sollen, und welche mit 90% der Größe. Das kommt nämlich darauf an, ob man jetzt zum Beispiel Menschen wie Gandalf oder was auch immer Gandalf ist, filmen möchte mit diesen Hobbit-Höhlen. Dann müssen die Höhlen natürlich irgendwie zu der Größe der Person passen. Und die 60%, andersrum wahrscheinlich, ne? Das war geil. 60% ist, wenn man halt die Hobbits mit ihren Kindern filmen will, damit das von der Größe halt auch passt. Ist irgendwie ein bisschen spannend, denkt man so, wenn man den Film guckt, gar nicht drüber nach. Aber schon relativ clever.
Ja. Punkt.